From Recorded Future News, this is Click Here.
A little volume.
There's just something about kids playing piano.
Oh, wait, no, it's... I don't remember the last part.
Just try anything.
This is Patricia DeBeer, and her son Matthew is the one who's playing.
Try it in the lighter notes, the middle notes.
Oh, like this one?
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, Patricia was sitting in her living room in Florida. Matthew was about 6 years old at the time, and he was seated before a small toy piano. When, out of the blue, he suddenly declares,
He goes, hey, listen to this. And then he started to play a little tune on the piano, a small piano that we had, a very, very small one.
The tune was something he'd heard on YouTube, and Patricia was amazed. He seemed to be plucking the tune out of thin air.
And I asked him where he learned it, and he said, I just heard the song and I figured it out.
At 6, Matthew was like most boys his age. He loved sports and swimming and the beach near their house, but he also had trouble regulating his emotions. He'd been diagnosed with a condition called disruptive mood dysregulation disorder.
So basically, children with this have a very active amygdala, so they're constantly in a fight or flight mode. So even the smallest thing can make them react and not react in a normal sense. So if you can imagine somebody being cranky all the time, that's sometimes how he is.
There are medicines he can take, the same ones that address other mood disorders, and there's therapy.
But we've done therapy for a very, very long time, and we didn't see much improvement.
But here, sitting on the floor, playing that little toy piano, copying that tune he'd heard, he seemed at peace. So Patricia wondered if learning to play the piano might give Matthew an outlet for all those feelings he struggled with. Now, new pianos are expensive, and there was no way of telling whether this was a passing fancy for Matthew or the beginning of a lifelong love affair with music. So Patricia went online to see if there was a used piano for him.
I was on Facebook, and I was just browsing, and I came across this listing for a piano that was free.
And not just any piano, a Steinway Baby Grand, a kind of Rolls Royce of pianos.
So I do know what Steinway is, and I know it's a very expensive piano. And it was a baby grand piano, so I was like, that's pretty nice.
She clicked on the listing. The piano, it said, was free. The buyer just needed to pay for the shipping.
So in the listing, it stated basically that the person that was selling it online was selling it for a sister or a family member. And the person that was listing it was a bit older, so I understood that. I know my mother's not the best at listing things on Facebook, so sometimes I'd help out.
And did you reach out to the person?
I did. And that's when they referred me to email this person, Dr. Joyce.
When she emailed, Dr. Joyce told her that the Steinway had belonged to her husband, and he had recently passed away. And then Dr. Joyce said she was making a fresh start and was moving across the country.
She then said that the piano had already been shipped out, but I could contact the freight company that was shipping it and have it rerouted.
Dr. Joyce told Patricia she could have the piano for free if she'd just cover the $625 rerouting fee.
In my work, we ship large tables, and there has been times where I've had to reroute packages. And it takes a bit of work, but it can be done.
She sent the money through the Zelle payment app, and she got a tracking number and a delivery date, and this was awesome, until it wasn't. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here, a podcast about all things cyber and intelligence. We tell true stories about the people making and breaking our digital world. And today, we're singing a song of a piano scam and a hack that doesn't involve your computer or a vulnerability or any tech at all. All scammers need to make it work is you, or an 8-year-old who wants to play piano.
There's no technological vulnerability that they're exploiting. They're exploiting the human experience.
Stay with us. From Recorded Future News, this is Click Here. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. On the day the piano was set to be delivered, Patricia got a strange message.
I got an email saying that I need to pay an interstate fee.
The shipping company was asking for an additional $1,000.
And I was like, what the world's an interstate fee? I work with shipping and I ship across state lines all the time. You don't pay any fees to cross state borders.
Patricia owns a furniture company, so she's very familiar with the ins and outs of shipping. Even so, she double-checked, went back to the shipping company website, but this time to check when it had been registered.
And that's when I realized the website had only been created like 2 weeks prior or a month prior.
Patricia realized there was no piano coming, and she had lost more than $600. But more importantly, Matthew wasn't going to get that piano that could have helped him. Looking back on it, Patricia had done just about everything she could to make sure Matthew's free piano was on the up and up. When she called the shipping company, she got the name of the woman she spoke to and then actually looked her up on Facebook, just to make sure the employee was who she said she was.
I went to her profile. I went through her friends. Her profile was an older profile. She had several friends where people are wishing her happy birthday. There's communication going on her profile, so I know her profile was a legitimate profile.
She also vetted the person who was selling the piano, that Dr. Joyce.
The Dr. Joyce lady, I looked her up. There's some Dr. Joyce out there and kind of has a tie to Vero Beach. So I was like, okay, there's legitimacy there.
She even dug into the shipping company.
Everything was legitimate looking. They had tracking numbers, and the tracking numbers you could input onto their website, and then it would pull up your details.
The whole pay me through Zelle situation passed Patricia's smell test too. She was used to doing that.
I pay a lot of my trucking companies through Zelle. So for a trucking company to say, hey, send it by Zelle, completely understand it.
So when instead of a baby grand, Patricia got an email asking for more money, she began to retrace her steps. She called the delivery company's number, the one she had used before.
And all of a sudden, it's nobody's answering, nobody's anything.
And it just keeps ringing. So she goes online to check out the shipping company's Facebook page. It was real, just like she thought. But she found out later scammers had created it. And the shipping website, that was made up too.
The website was completely a shipping website. When you see logistics all day, it was a logistics website. So I never thought that somebody would go that far.
Objectively, this shouldn't have happened to Patricia. She works with shipping every day and even did a ton of due diligence.
I was amazed that I somehow got swindled, checking all my boxes.
Of course, thinking through all the angles ahead of time is the essence of a great scam. Just ask Selena Larson.
That is something that the best social engineers will do, is they will do their research to try and see what can be a convincing story.
Selena is a senior threat intelligence analyst at Proofpoint, a California cybersecurity company, and she co-authored a recent report on the surge of piano scams. They've seen more than 100,000 piano scam emails just in the first half of 2024 alone.
When I first saw this, I was like, I find these scams to be so interesting because who is looking for a piano?
But any musician will tell you this is a pretty common way to get a piano. A colleague of Selena's, who's a pianist, told her as much.
He's like, no, this is how people get rid of pianos. They give them away for free, but ask the recipient to pay shipping because that can be the most expensive part of it.
Starting around January 2024, a flood of postings for free pianos started making the rounds on the web. Selena and her colleagues found more than 125,000 emails linked to these scams. And lots of people have been falling for them, not just Patricia.
So it's actually pretty clever. So if you are a musician or looking for a piano, this is not necessarily something that would immediately seem suspicious, because oftentimes how they're, gotten rid of from people just, I just want to get this out of my house, but pay for shipping and it's yours.
Which, of course, is the trick. Scammers are playing on two ideas. First, the scam is pretty simple. It's not built around something really complicated like crypto. If I'm the little old lady who's selling my piano because I'm downsizing, I'm probably not into crypto.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Although my mom is still very mad at me for telling her back in the early days of Bitcoin, please don't get Bitcoin. I really steered her wrong there, I guess.
And second, they tap into people's hopes, dreams, and wishes, and then try to satisfy them. All this can be yours, they say, as long as you
pay a little bit of money up front to whoever is offering the goods or service.
The road to hell is paved with a whole host of these kinds of scams. Most of them are oldies but goodies. There's job fraud,
where they'll pretend that they're offering a job and say, okay, we'll send you the equipment needed for your job if you just send me shipping.
Event ticket fraud.
Oh, if you've won some tickets, if you just pay me this money, we'll send you the tickets.
Even investment fraud.
Oh, if you pay a little bit now, if you give me a small payment of cryptocurrency, you'll get a larger one in return.
All of this happens because of the most basic thing, human desire.
I like to kind of describe it as like brain hacking. People can say the right things to trigger your brain to make certain decisions. And the best social engineers are also the best brain hackers. And that's really what it comes down to. There's no technological vulnerability that they're exploiting. They're exploiting the human experience.
And more than anything else, this is the power of this kind of scam. The weak link here is humanity, which makes it nearly impossible to stop.
It's the human piece of the cybersecurity puzzle that you can't predict and you can't patch. And it's so important for us to be aware of the different ways that people can manipulate us.
When we come back, why we saw that huge surge in piano scams and what we can do about them.
I've had that happen half a dozen times.
Half a dozen times, you said?
Oh, yeah. Over the course of the last 5 years.
Stay with us. Gary Gordon was one of those kids who sat in front of a keyboard and just kind of took to it.
My parents got an organ when I was like 5, and I started messing around on it, and it just made sense to me. And so, I mean, it was very obvious that I was like meant to do that. Wasn't a big thing where, they had to force me to practice because I was excited. I was playing all kinds of stuff. I had kids from the neighborhood that would come to and sit outside our front door while I played and practiced and played, Pink Panther and all these other tunes and stuff.
He won a bunch of regional contests.
I ended up winning the Yamaha Electone Organ Festival when I was 10 and a half years old. It was up to 18 category.
He got to play for the president. Which president did you play for?
Nixon.
He was even in Baldwin ad campaigns similar to this one.
Baldwin Organs had a big ad campaign, about me and stuff. And
Gary grew up became part of a cover band, and traveled the world. Can you play a little Styx for us?
Oh, gosh. I haven't played any of that stuff in forever. I had 4 keyboards in front of me on stands and one to the side and a full pedal board. And, you're playing some of these things, if you're doing covers like Styx or something like that. I don't know.
That was awesome.
I haven't played that stuff. Good gosh, I'd have 3 or 4 keyboards going at once sometimes.
So, long story short, Gary has been in the piano industry now for about 42 years, but he doesn't just play them anymore, he sells them.
Okay, I don't know if
He's sales
can
manager
you
at the
actually see
Riverton
things?
Piano Company just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. And he took us on a little video tour of the showroom.
Yeah, I mean, we've got quite a few different pianos in here. We carry Yamaha, Baldwin, Schumann, Roland, Busendorfer.
It's 5,000 square feet with grand pianos everywhere, including a Busendorfer. They're a handmade piano from Austria. Is that the Busendorfer there? Wow, look at that.
Yeah, you can see it's $286,000.
How much?
$286,299.
Wow. He has a theory about why piano scams are running rampant these days. He links it all to the pandemic.
People didn't have anything to do. Music went through the roof. Piano sales were just amazing.
Locked in your house? Time to finally learn to play the piano like you've always said you wanted to.
I kind of felt a little strange during the pandemic because, a lot of my friends and stuff were not doing so well. And I had my best 2 years ever. I mean, good gosh, 2022, I sold over $1 million worth of piano.
Gary wrote a blog post back in May on all the different scams he'd been seeing. There's one he himself has been targeted with at least half a dozen times in the past 5 years alone. And it seems tailor-made for music stores.
They'll see a used piano that I have advertised, and they're like, okay, I want to buy that. And I'm like, okay, well, here, I'll write this up and, send me an invoice for, you send me a check for whatever, $3,000.
They purposely overpay, sending a cashier's check for $4,000.
So then I contact them back and say, the piano was $3,000, you sent me $4,000. And then they're like, oh, yeah, well, that's for my movers. I'm going to send my delivery people out to pick it up. And just so I don't have to write 2 checks, whatever, if you just write them a check for the $1,000, then, that'll take care of it. You'll be paid and they'll be paid. If you're dumb enough, they take your piano and they take $1,000. And the check turns out to be bogus.
Gary says there's a message in all of this, if only we allow ourselves to receive it.
Acknowledge that it's something that you really want to be true. I'm always very skeptical of things that I want to believe. That's the main thing. It's an emotional tug that is hard to resist. But anytime you really want to believe something, make sure you're not believing it just because you want to believe it, but because it's actually true.
Trust, get excited, be hopeful, but verify.
And, you can usually verify things by asking questions, asking for more pictures or the serial number of the piano, things like that. That's what we always tell people to ask. Find out what the name of the piano is, the serial number, the model number, the size, some pictures, because when they bring that stuff into me,
Gary says he can just look up the serial number and tell you the piano was made in 1972, not 2022. If they claim it's a particular model, he can tell you it doesn't match the picture. It's supposed to have spade legs, not straight ones. Even in elaborate schemes like the one targeting Patricia and her son, there are clues, if only you're willing to look for them. The problem is most people, excited about getting their dream piano, dream job, or dream concert tickets, don't want to look twice. It's understandable because even people who study and work on fighting these kinds of scams often don't, according to Selena Larson of Proofpoint.
I think that that's really what's interesting and why I think fraud is a little bit underappreciated and undercovered from the cybersecurity perspective, because oftentimes us as security researchers, we have this bias to things that are hackable.
Find the malware, what's buried in the code, where was the network compromised? That's the stuff we tell you about all the time. But these scams are different.
The only activity is the conversation and the money being transferred. So I think that this kind of exposes a bias in cybersecurity. Oftentimes you hear people say, fraud isn't even a cybersecurity thing because there's no vulnerability, there's no malware. But there is this sort of exploiting people that we don't really think of as the same thing as malware, but it really leads to some very, very serious consequences.
Consequences that really aren't so different from what malware can cause. The loss of time and money, and another chink in the armor of trust. Whether you're an artist like Gary, who has built a career around the music he loves, or Patricia's son Matthew, who was just learning to play. Once she knew she was scammed, there wasn't much Patricia could do. The money was gone. Though Patricia said she did have a small way to get even.
But I did have my fun with them in the end, because with Zelle, I recorded, I think I got about 5 email addresses from them, and I reported every single email address that they came across so that Zelle would block all those accounts.
As for her son Matthew, he's still drawn to pianos when he sees them.
We were in a thrift store, and he was starting to play, and it was then people started to look, and he's like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this.
Fortunately, there's a piano in their building, so he occasionally will go and play that, though Patricia says he's kind of lost interest.
That's all I know.
That's all you know?
Yeah, I don't.
Want to try more?
No.
No?
This is Click Here. Here are some of the top cyber and intelligence stories of the past week.
The Department of Justice filed a lawsuit against TikTok and its parent company ByteDance today for allegedly violating the law by collecting data on children under the age of 13.
The FTC unveiled the lawsuit shortly after it announced last month that the commission had uncovered evidence that TikTok was routinely violating children's data privacy laws. Allegedly, the company was doing things like knowingly permitting children to create regular TikTok accounts and allowing them to create, view, and share videos and messages with adults. The FTC complaint lodged against TikTok also alleges that the company gathered and stored personal information collected from children despite not having alerted their parents or gotten their consent for the practice. TikTok, for its part, has cried foul and said many of the allegations included things from the past or things that they've already addressed. Speaking of China, internet regulators in Beijing have floated a proposal to move the job of online verification from websites and apps to the government, creating a single national ID that people would use across the internet. The Ministry of Public Security and the Cyberspace Administration of China say the proposal is aimed at protecting privacy and taking a bite out of online fraud. The ID systems, the government says, would be voluntary, though some experts believe that it's unlikely, given Beijing's propensity to exercise tight control over information and its practice of monitoring people's behavior on the internet. A national internet ID could centralize the ability to track people across different online platforms. The proposal is out for public comment now. And finally, as a new version of Michael Jackson's It's Black, It's White video went viral with morphing faces of Vice President Kamala Harris, more than 100 venture capitalists announced last week that they would be voting for Harris in November and would be soliciting donations for her presidential campaign. The group includes the founder of LinkedIn, Reid Hoffman, Mark Cuban, the former owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and billionaire Chris Sacca, among others. The move was perhaps the most public pushback yet to the roster of right-wing venture capitalists and executives, from Elon Musk to investor Mark Andreessen, who are vocally backing Trump.
Today's episode was produced by Sean Powers, Kat Schucknecht, and me, Jade Abdul-Malik. It was edited by Karen Duffin, fact-checked by Darren Ankrum, and contains original music by Ben Livingston, with some other music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, and our illustrator is Megan Goff. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News. Tune in on Friday for Mic Drop, which features our favorite interview. We'll have a new episode of Click Here on Tuesday. See you then.